Hey everyone, it's Sarah from Sarah's Soaps, and today I wanted to talk to you about hot process soap and lend you a couple tips, tricks, a little bit of insight about the process. So I'm going to start with you are cooking your soap. So just like people did times before us, over a wood fire with a huge pot, they put all their ingredients, their oils, their fats, their lye into a pot and they cook it. So instead of cold process soap after you emulsify and pour it, in hot process you are actually cooking the soap. Which leads me to my next point, and that is that you are fully completing the saponification process. So in cold process soap, you emulsify your oils and your lye and you pour it, mold it, and let it cure for 6 to 8 weeks or however long you do cure it. Hot process, you actually are cooking out the lye, neutralizing it. So that is a benefit of hot process soap. That is, after it's done molding and it's cooled, you can take it out and use it right away. I would still recommend letting it lose its water for a few weeks. It'll just really firm up and it'll let you have a harder bar of soap and it will definitely last longer. And also, you can use any cold process recipe. One benefit to hot process soap is that you can add your additives and your super fats after the cook, which just means that all your lye is neutralized, you're about to mold, and this way you know that they are not being touched by the lye. So you can use any cold process recipe with your hot process soap. What should my soap look like? People always ask this all the time. Now, stages vary from person to person. Sometimes I don't get all the stages, sometimes I do, but I took some pictures of some of the stages that my soap goes through. So this is your oils and your lye. Right before you're about to emulsify it with your stick blender, I just poured it in and it's just sitting in the pot right now waiting to be blended. And right here is when it's been emulsified, so it's at medium trace, so it's almost like a custard, it looks like pudding. And you will find that thinner traces, your soap will cook slower, and anywhere from a medium to thick trace, your soap will actually help you and cook a little bit faster. So blend away. And here you can see my soap is starting to gel, and you can see it right around the outside. It kind of has a more translucent look than it does in the middle, and your soap will start to gel from the outside in. So sometimes you can see and feel a lump in the middle. That's okay, it'll all eventually stir out and get blended together, not to worry. It also all depends on your crock pot. My soap never goes through the applesauce phase that they always talk about, so I didn't include a picture here, but it depends on the temperature and the age of your crock pot that you are cooking your soap in. And then after that, I always get the Vaseline stage. So it looks like this. It is literally called the Vaseline stage because it looks and feels just like Vaseline. Now is when you would test it. You can do your ZAP test or any other test that you use to make sure that your soap is neutralized. If it's neutralized, it's done. You can add your super fats, your additives, your scents, and mold it. And in short, that is a little summary on the hot process method of making soaps. And now I want to get into some tips and tricks that I use when doing hot process soap that I really wish someone told me about. So my first one is using beer. So as you can see here, I have this pot on the stove. Now I'm simmering it at the lowest heat possible. I do not want to burn or scorch my beer. All I want to do is help to cook some of the alcohol and carbonation out. Now you'll see as I'm dropping my beer back into the pot here, there's a few bubbles. Now bubbles will come up because when you're dropping it, you're incorporating air, but you just don't want to see the bubbles that you would see if you poured out a can of pop. That's the carbonation. As you can see here, my beer is a little frothy, but that's just because I'm stirring it. I would freeze this in the freezer and then add my lye to it when I use my soap. This beer is done, it's ready, and it'll help prevent against volcanoes, which are probably one of the worst things. My next tip is using milk, and I use these little freezer trays from the dollar store. I pour my milk into them, and then I freeze them solid before I know that I'm going to be using milk. And once they're solid, I can use them, and I pop them out one by one. I put them into my jar or container that I'm using to mix my liquids with lye, and I stir constantly. Keep stirring because you do not want to scorch your milk. You're going to get a slight ammonia smell, and that's okay. It should be a pale yellow to a yellow, but you know that your lye has completely scorched and burned your milk if your milk comes out at a bright orange color. Another trick that I use is adding my additives and superfats together before I put them into my soap. And this is so much easier for not forgetting to add something to your soap, which I am so famous for doing. So all I do is I add my additives and oils together, and I mix them together, make sure that there's no clumps and they're both fully incorporated, and from there I add them to my soap. But before I add them to my soap, I like to use a little trick during the cooking process of my soap, and it's heating your additives. I think I got it at a thrift store for about $2 or $3, and you're supposed to use it to keep your coffee pot or your coffee cup hot. And I just use it, there's a low and a high setting. I plug it in and I use it with my superfats and additives to warm them up before I add them to my soap, and that helps to prevent seizing, and it actually helps for a better, smoother soap. So there you go, guys. Those are just some tips and tricks that I use, and hopefully you'll use them too. Thanks for watching. Bye!